We're live, pal. This is our new and live show. Actually, we're 4 in. Are we still considered new? I'll consider us new. We're still new to the F4W Wrestling Observer Network. And Andrew was trying to throw the behind-the-scene Twitch feed a little bit of a head fake because we do have a special guest in our 4th chair today, but I want to save him for last. All I will say is the forbidden door in wrestling media is open. First, let me introduce my dream team, starting with the James Brown of our team, the hardest working woman in wrestling media, Denise Salcedo. What's up, Denise?
I am, for one, am very excited about this forbidden door being opening. I think this is going to be an exciting episode of We're Live, pal. Can't wait to get to it.
And then next, the guy who just drops bombs on Mat Men. Gets the internet wrestling gets the internet wrestling fans talking. Andrew Zarian, what is up, Andrew?
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, it's been an interesting couple months, I gotta say. When I'm getting yelled at from fans and WWE, and then also people from WWE telling me like, "Hey, I really like this what you wrote," and then fans tell me it's a very complicated world I'm living in. Listen, man, this is all fun. Until it's not, and then I'll disappear. I'll crawl into a cave, and you'll never see me again. That's how it'll work out.
The rise and fall.
I don't want that to happen.
All right. You know what, Denise? I need one promise from you, okay? When that day comes, and like I totally screw up, can you make that YouTube video, the rise and fall of Andrew Zarian? Can you be the one that puts it out?
Now, here's the question, though. If you have you just blow up on like the social media world, like in terms of in a bad way, do I have to come out and defend you? Or can I just like be those people that like stay quiet and pretend like I didn't know you the entire time? I had no idea.
I would like to hire you for representation like Gloria Allred. Right? You would be my Gloria. You would be my legal representation on the internet.
I'll have your back, Andrew. That's Perfect. It. I'll have your back in case it all blows up.
All right, we've teased it enough. Our special guest, he is the managing editor of Fightful, as well as Denise's bestie. I don't know which one is more important. I want to welcome Sean Ross Sapp to the show. Sean, welcome, and what is up, my friend?
Thank you for having me. Obviously, conditional on me being here that I was announced as Denise's bestie. That's what landed me this spot. Let's be real.
I run everything, Sean. I run everything.
Denise got mad because I put her on blast at Daly's place, and you know what? I think she's just embraced. We won't go into that. People who watched our show last night will know what we're talking about. But being Denise's bestie comes with infinite connections at this point.
It does. Congratulations, Excellent.
Sean. All right, so this was a very big week for WWE. So I want to start there. And I think we're going to mostly talk about WWE related things on today's show. It was a great weekend for them with SmackDown being live in front of fans. That was technically their second show of late. WrestleMania wasn't in front of fans as well. But and then the really good Money in the Bank pay-per-view, except if you were on the Peacock tech team getting all the blame for the bad video. But it also led us to a very newsworthy Monday Night Raw, newsworthy in both a good and a bad way. But let's start with Monday Night Raw. Let's also start with the good. And Denise, get ready. I want to lead with you because as we say on this show, ladies first. At Money in the Bank, John Cena returned to tell Roman Reigns that he couldn't see him. And then he opened Raw telling us why he's back, even going so far as to use the Walter Payton line about when you're good, you tell everyone, but when you're great, they tell you. Denise, John Cena is back. He had a great promo on Raw. Are you excited? What did you think of that opening segment?
All right, so first and foremost, I'm glad we're kicking off with this John Cena return because I think based on the events and everything that unfolded on last night's Raw, I mean, things were just absolutely insane. And definitely John Cena's return to WWE, especially last night on Raw, was definitely one of the higher points of the show. Now, I did think that it kind of took a second to actually really get hot. To me, his promo didn't necessarily pick up until he started addressing Roman Reigns because that really is is what we want to see. And now that we officially kind of know that we're headed in that direction, it's pretty exciting. So I did like, having John Cena open the show, obviously. And I'm excited that we're apparently having this summer of John Cena where we're going to be seeing him multiple times heading into SummerSlam.
Yeah, even house shows, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of fun for the fans to get to see him when they come to town or when WWE comes to town. But Andrew, you've been really close to this situation. John Cena returned. Was it as big as you thought it could have been?
Yeah, I think it was exactly what it was gonna be. They've had this in the works since probably February-ish. Right, I got to go back, but I think around February I was told that this may be the match. I think it's exactly what they need to do. They need to get back to business as usual. Obviously, that's what they want to do. And who better than having your top guys like a John Cena and an Edge and all these people involved in that top mix. I think for Cena, he's gonna bring in the casual fans, and this is what we're talking about now, right? They need to get as many eyeballs as possible on their product to regrow. Obviously, the pandemic, the last 18 months, 17 months has been terrible for almost every industry, right? Nearly everything. So WWE is going to attempt to do everything that they can to bring those viewers back. And who better than John Cena, obviously, on the SmackDown side.
Yeah, and Sean, I want to hear your thoughts on just the creative aspect of John Cena being back, but also kind of jumping on what Andrew said about business. Do you see this in part two of your answer? Do you see this as a thing that could inject something into WWE's business as we get towards this SummerSlam period?
I definitely think it could inject some sort of new blood or returning fans into their business. I mean, we've seen Brandon Thurston post some of those graphs, and it seems like the steep drop off in viewership definitely correlated with John Cena and his step away from full-time pro wrestling. And I don't expect him to be back full-time, maybe for this short period. But I mean, first off, the reaction was incredible. One of the best ovations that I've possibly heard. And I thought it was this unique combination of absence makes the heart grow fonder. You don't know what you got till it's gone. A guy being a sustained celebrity outside of wrestling. And quite frankly, what having a long-term protected superstar can be. A superstar that is allowed to be bigger than the marquee. I don't know that I think the Raw booking last night pretty well indicated that they still want WWE to be the marquee, but then who are the people that get the biggest pops? Usually the people who have been gone from WWE for sustained periods of time. I don't know what that tells. I mean, Edge still gets one of the biggest reactions, and he was gone for 10 years. Do I think that he would still be getting that reaction if he was here that entire time? No. And there's a lot of ways you can kind of parse that, but I think ultimately people are going to see there are 4 rematches on Raw. If they keep doing the same things over and over again, I think people will quickly see after SummerSlam, it's not changing.
I think it's a great point. And yes, I will quote Jim Cornette on this show, but he used to always say, "How can I miss you if you're never gone or if you've never left?" And I think what Sean is saying is super important to this conversation, because part of the reason why John Cena was so electric is because we just missed him. We hadn't seen him in such a long time. And I also thought, I don't know if this was what he was trying to do, but his John Cena promo felt a little bit more like a Rock promo than it felt like as a John Cena promo. I don't know if he's kind of taken clues from every time Rock would come back. Lots of call and response with the fans. It was all about the fans. But I wanted to actually talk a little bit more about something that Sean was saying, which is this idea that fans are back is going to increase the ratings on shows. We saw it on SmackDown already. I don't know, the Raw number is probably out or close to out. I imagine they did a really strong number from what they were doing. But at some point, fans are going to watch the shows and just say, oh, yeah, this is just sort of what we were used to with Raw and SmackDown. Now, I want to go back to Sean, and then we'll get to everybody else's answer on this. But, Sean, what do they need to do to sustain this automatic increase in fans. They didn't do anything, right? It's just the fact that they're promoting that fans are back, that these shows should be hotter. So this is an artificial increase, but it's there. What can they do with these extra eyeballs to keep them around and not just go back to what we were before this time period?
Ultimately, I think it's a complete cycle of wins and losses mattering. And when you've created a culture within that company that wins and losses don't matter, it's like, okay, well then what does? They're great at creating these moments. Like there was a great Bianca Belair, Sasha Banks moment at WrestleMania that happened in spite of terrible booking that preceded it. If wins and losses matter, the championships matter. If the championships matter, the people who hold them matter. If the championships matter, the matches that lead to someone getting an opportunity at the championships matter. And it goes on and on and on. I think that you can't get lost on that. I know WWE is ultimately a content creation company that's more worried about watch hours than they are about anything of late. But ultimately, you have to give us a reason to watch what's happening on Monday. Like, tell me why I should be sitting through 3 hours of this stuff when it doesn't matter. Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart beat Tamina and Natalya on their debut. Well, what happened? They got a rematch the next week. Okay, non-title, same result. Why should we have watched that? What's the point of that? Like, it's just showing you that you can completely miss this show but not miss anything.
All right, Andrew, want to get your thoughts on the same question?
You know, I think for them coming back with a live audience, they're gonna have a built-in boom to begin with, right? And I agree with Sean 100%. I do think that we need to enter a world again where wins and losses matter in WWE. And a great example, and I know you're probably going to go to this, so I'm going to use him as an example, and I'm not going to focus in, but Big E is a great example of this, right? You've now given him the Money in the Bank. He is now the number one contender at any point for either one of the titles, I guess. You know, you could do that. So how do you convince people that, yeah, he's a comedy act, he's a beloved babyface, but now you're going to turn him into this legitimate challenger, world championship level person? How do you do that? You obviously don't want to mess up his personality because it's perfect for exactly the character he's portraying. What's the other thing you need to do? He needs to start dominating. He needs to start winning everything. I mean, and I know a lot of people are jumping on the whole, you know, he should cash in now. He should have cashed in that day. He should cash in at SummerSlam. I would very much prefer don't rush him. You know, you have an opportunity to do something tremendously unique in this company, and that's to create a beloved babyface by all, right? You have that now, and you could create a long-term babyface at that level. Take your time, build him, have him start becoming dominant, beating everybody, and then have him cross paths and build that story. It's really going to come down to how you're building the story and how much it means at the end of the day. And you know what? If you tell people, if you lose, it matters, and if you win, it matters. If you tell the audience that, they're gonna follow that. You know, I'm not saying that the AEW way of having the wins and losses on the screen. I'm not going as far as that, but I'm saying, man, I want to see someone on a win streak. You know, I don't want to see him, you know, lose twice and then win twice and then you break even. I think that's the cycle they need to break out of. And this is a reset on everything. This is the moment to do it.
Well, I think Pete Rosenberg, if you saw his latest tweet, he would disagree with you that wins and losses matter.
I saw.
Ultimately, the way that I look at it is you want to see two people who are the best compete to see who the best is. That's why I never mind. Like I had some people say, oh, well, if Deanna faces Britt Baker, nobody can be, like, both people can't be protected. There's no good way to get out of it. Yeah, two really good wrestlers, one pins the other, stuff happens. I'm way more okay with that than win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. I never care to see who the most mediocre performer is. I want to see the best characters, the best performers. And for those mediocre characters, come up with creative stories as to why they're mediocre.
All right, Denise, you watch this show, all the shows, every week. You talk about them every week. You get feedback from your community every week. Do you have a sense of what would keep people around to watch Raw and SmackDown and for the audience to come back?
Yeah, so exactly building upon what both Andrew and Sean just said right now, I do want to add the fact that obviously the big topic of discussion is stop with the lazy, creative actually do some proper storytelling. Right now, one of the best stories that there is that we have going in wrestling right now is Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. Why? Because there's different layers to that. There's creativity to that. So you want to go ahead and have that. And for a moment, they did have that. And you can still argue that they still have that, obviously, with Roman Reigns and everything that they have, going with him. And they are capable of that. We're just not seeing that. But to add to this, I do think that it is important for them to utilize the strengths of the versatility that they have in their roster. So one of the things that, and again, I hate to compare, AEW and WWE, but it's going to make my argument here. One of the things that I constantly get from people, like you mentioned on social media, is why they like the AEW product is because it moves fast. But here's the thing, we see different stuff every week, and you see a versatility within the talent. Now, WWE has a vast roster. They have a lot of people that could bring different things to the screen. They can provide different things. And instead of essentially, burying those guys that aren't necessarily doing what you want them to do, instead highlight their strengths and put them out there so that the people could get a different taste, a different flavor of what that person can bring to the actual show. And if you keep the show moving along in a pace that doesn't feel repetitive, and obviously completely eliminate those rematches, because the rematches are absolutely killing people, because it doesn't even matter if you have guys that go out there and they put on an amazing match. Unfortunately, if we've already seen it 1 zillion times, you're just automatically not going to care. You know what you're going to do? You're going to get up, you're going to go to your kitchen, you're going to go grab a snack, you're going to go to the bathroom, you're going to talk to whoever's in the house. You're not going to pay attention, and you're going to come back until they're actually showing you something different on the screen. So it's just a matter of actually adding creativity, adding a better flow to the show, and just so many different things that, again, also build upon what Andrew and Sean just mentioned as well.
Awesome. I think all of you are very much right on. And Denise, you mentioned something about the layers of storytelling. And I am reviewing 1997 Raw for my own Fight Game Media Patreon. And so I'm watching this Bret Hart Canada versus USA Austin storyline. And there are so many layers to it, so much so to that I'm actually surprised that they pulled it off in the fashion that they did. But then again, we're talking something that's 24 years ago at this point. And it's not the same company. We are in the content era for WWE. But all great points. I want to move on to another moment, which is a feel-good moment, especially if you are a fan of the Nikki Cross character. Now, Nikki ASH, she closes down Raw. Charlotte against Rhea Ripley, a rematch from last night. Denise had already stated the rematches. And then she cashes in on Charlotte, wins the Raw Women's title. I don't know how seriously WWE believes in this character. My instinct says not that much, and that this is just maybe a way to get Charlotte another championship win. But I don't want to be too cynical here, because I do think that was a very fun moment. As we always say, it's about the follow-up. But Denise, let's go back to you, and we'll go around the room again. What did you think of Nikki ASH winning the Raw Women's Championship and cashing in her Money in the Bank contract?
So, obviously there were a lot of things that we haven't even covered just yet on, what occurred on Raw. And, based on everything that went down, I would definitely say that Nikki ASH cashing in her Money in the Bank briefcase and winning the Raw Women's Championship was honestly a high point. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh, this is BS. Like, she shouldn't be winning. Her character is not the, character that you want to see winning the championship. And I get all that. I do get that argument. But as somebody that has been watching religiously, it's not necessarily like we were having the greatest Raw Women's Championship run with Rhea Ripley, who is polar opposite of what Nikki ASH is. Now, a lot of people thought that Nikki ASH, if she did cash in, that it was going to be a failure, that she wasn't going to go ahead and win, and she did. Now, part of me kind of feels like she's going to be a transitional champion, like they're not going to do much with her, and I kind of hope that I'm wrong in that sense, because one of the major things things that has been of topic is the fact that we're returning to live. Well, we're already back with live crowds. So when you look at people that have gotten over with kids, with children, they're usually, those fun, types of characters. And I do think that Nikki ASH, if she does start to connect with that younger audience and they actually give the younger audience a reason to, connect with Nikki ASH, they have something there. And I do think that they can, if they play their cards right, they could have something with Nikki ASH. So I hope that they actually do give her a decent run, a respectable run. Now, will that happen? I have no idea, but I do hope for it.
All right, before we get to Andrew, because I want Andrew's thoughts next, is it Ash? Is it ASH? I feel like they say both on Raw. I'm not 100% sure what it is. Okay, let's go Ash then, because ASH is really weird and uncomfortable. I think let's just go Ash. Okay, Andrew, what did you think about Nikki ASH cashing in her Money in the Bank? Already, they've done a better job with the Money in the Bank contracts this year than last year. The Raw the next night, let's cash it in. Let's take some of that momentum from Money in the Bank and let's put it on Nikki ASH.
I listen. Personally, I think it's awesome for her. Right? She's been through it all. She had a great character, Insanity. I thought that was great, and then she came up to the main roster. She was Alexa's, I guess, sidekick, and that kind of went nowhere. And now she's in the superhero gimmick. A lot of people were upset over it, but you got to look at again. Everything comes down to the financial side of it, right? You're gonna merchandise all these masks. You're gonna have the capes. You're gonna have the kids' outfits. You're gonna have the dolls. You're gonna have the superhero stuff. You're gonna sell. And now, I mean, that's really one of the main reasons here, right? You have a product that is going to target kids, a younger audience, with fans coming back. So you could see the merch lines lining up for, superhero in training T-shirts and the masks and all that stuff. I mean, this is WWE marketing 101, exactly what they've done since 1984. The other reason was, obviously, they're trying to get to that 16-time, 17-time World Heavyweight Championship for Charlotte, and you're going to see a lot of these. You're going to see her dropping the title and picking it up over the next couple of years like this. This is part of their grand plan because they know there's a time clock. You eventually, and this happens, is that there's a ticking clock on this, and they need to get to it before it doesn't happen. People's contracts end. I don't know what her plans are in her life, if she wants to settle down, get married, have kids. I mean, those are all things up in the air, and if they have a grand plan, they need to get to there. But I think for Nikki, this is, do you think she honestly, a year and a half ago, thought, like, I'm going to be the world champion in the biggest company in the world for what I do? I think it's a tremendous accomplishment for her. It's also going to be a great way for her to make a ton of money that she probably wasn't making with all this merch sale she's going to have for all of her, paraphernalia that they're going to be selling.
That's a great point, though. I don't know if they're going to bring back the superhero in training T-shirts. But hang with me here, Andrew, because
They'll do it. I'm telling you, they'll do it.
I do want to follow up with this. Shane Helms, how soon was he pitching to come back as the Hurricane and to accompany Nikki ASH? Was it yesterday? Was it 2 weeks ago? Was it a month ago? Like, how soon was he trying to get back in the act here?
You broke up to me, Garrett. What was? Can you say that?
Sorry, Shane Helms, the Hurricane. Yeah. How soon was he trying to get in on this Nikki ASH act?
I mean, how it's right there, right? You could have these segments where he's coaching her, teaching her, teaching her his moves that don't work on anybody. I think you could have a tremendous comedic segment with the two of those. At the end of the day, I saw the feedback online, and I saw some people were like, they got it, they saw it, and other people were just like, they were crapping on this whole thing tremendously, and I'm like, I'm all for letting this play out a little bit. Let's see where this goes. Like, I enjoyed it at the end for a multitude of reasons. I enjoyed it, but I thought it's interesting that they're giving an opportunity like this immediately as we're back with fans. There's a reason for it, obviously.
Yeah. All right, Sean, I want your thoughts on this because you've also been covering it. But also, it's sort of an addendum to this is, for the last two nights, the fan base has been chanting Becky Lynch at Charlotte.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, oh, wow, there is a giant match here for Becky Lynch when she comes back. Like, the fans are actually creating it for WWE. But with Charlotte losing that title, I mean, she could always get it back really quickly. But do you think there's, how do you think that this big Charlotte Becky match, which should be on our radars or on WWE's radar, how does that fit with what we just saw with Nikki ASH winning the title?
I don't even know if they're chanting it as much at Charlotte as they are the general booking and direction of WWE's women's division, which has been really aimless since Becky Lynch hit the bricks. All that work that Becky Lynch did to establish that title, a lot of it was undone. They brought in Rhea Ripley and she looked really good. And instead of making her this woman that beats people up real bad, they made her the troll face meme, and she does this to her opponents, which is, exactly what got her over. Outside of the crutch spot on the ramp, that was hilarious. That was objectively funny. But for Charlotte, I think that Becky match will almost always be there. They'll sort of always be each other's kryptonite. And that Evolution match, I mean, that's not lost on me. That's one of my favorite WWE matches ever. It was so good. And I just think Becky Lynch existing and coming back and facing anybody is a draw. Like, it doesn't have to be for a title. It doesn't have to be for anything. And I know it's not the WWE way, but it is a super babyface thing to do for Becky Lynch to come back, not even have a title match and say, even though I didn't lose it, I want to earn it. But WWE doesn't look at things like that at all. That's not how they do it. As far as Nikki, I think there is such a beautiful built-in story there, in that she legitimately could not get on TV after she was called up until Alexa Bliss just noticed her in a hallway and said, hey, hang out with me because nobody else likes me. And they became friends. Like, that was a thing that actually happened on our screens. Nikki Cross looked at her and said, what, you notice me? Nobody notices me. And then what happened when they weren't friends anymore? Nikki Cross wasn't on TV. Like, those were things that happened. There are slam dunk stories, but I mean, it's like we talk about on the Monday Night Raw post show. There's a slam dunk story for Jinder Mahal and Drew McIntyre. They were best friends that teamed together at the worst points of their life, got fired and won the WWE title, but they're feuding over a motorcycle and a sword right now. It's these slam dunk stories are there, and WWE refuses to tell them, and I don't know why.
All right, now let's talk about what I would consider the head-scratching part of Raw, and I want to stay with Sean because I also want to use this as an opportunity for Sean to tell us a little bit about Fightful Select, because he had an update, and I'll let him share what he wants to share about that update on his Patreon at Fightful Select. $5. I'm a subscriber. It's great. But Karrion Kross shows up with his NXT title. No Scarlett. Jeff Hardy have a match. Jeff Hardy rolls him up into this fluke win, feet on the ropes. But NXT's champion, who's been killing everybody on NXT, comes to Raw, his debut, your one opportunity, first impressions matter, and they have him lose to Jeff Hardy. Sean, I know you probably have a ton to say about this, so just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew can vouch for this. We were having a conversation yesterday.
We were going back and forth.
I was like, dude, I heard that Kross is losing tonight. And we were both just like, no way. There's no way that's happened. Like, I had to have heard something wrong. And then when it happened, we were both just like, really? Really? And we know what they're going to do. They're going to do the same thing they did with Lashley, where all of a sudden there's some reason why he's more aggressive now. Lashley didn't need to lose for that to happen. MVP lost the week before. He could have used that as the catalyst. Karrion Kross does not need to lose for this to happen. And there was a lot of frustration within NXT, especially for guys like Oney Lorcan, Finn Balor, Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, who all worked really, really hard to get this guy over. And I don't think that's lost on Karrion Kross either, that all these people went through immense pain and a lot of bumps to get him over. But it wasn't necessarily people feeling upset for Kross. It was feeling upset about the perception of the brand and all that. And, you know, there were people that were like, oh, well, Jeff Hardy's a former WWE champion, and why is this a big deal? Well, he lost to Veer on Main Event. The mere fact that he was on Main Event is enough. Like, that shows you what they thought of Jeff Hardy. And yeah, he's going to get beat up by Karrion Kross next week. That's what's going to happen. And this was a terrible message being sent to NXT, I thought.
Okay, anybody can answer this. I'll throw it out now, and then we'll get to everyone else's thoughts on this Karrion Kross deal. Whenever I see something where there's an NXT person who's been built up very well in NXT and comes to Raw and is just sort of marginalized, I immediately go back to the reason NXT was put on USA Channel, which was to play some defense against AEW, and then they just went out and AEW did their thing. NXT is a good show. I really like NXT, but the reason it was put on USA Channel was to sort of, lessen AEW's influence on Wednesday nights. And it did not do the job that it was supposed to do. So whenever I see something like this happen, I wonder if this is Vince going like, this, you guys had a role here, it didn't work, and so thus you can't be as important as the guys on Raw and SmackDown. Now, anybody can pop in here, but if you have a thought, or if I'm way off, whatever. But I just feel sort of like that's in the back of Vince's mind after they failed to destroy AEW.
I could say that. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Denise.
Well, I was just going to say that for me, like, I totally get why you would think that, because like, it's just crazy, but it just doesn't make sense. That's all I really want to say. That thought process, that way of thinking does not make sense, because at the end of the day, NXT is still part of your company. NXT, if they are popular and they are thriving and they are making money, hence you will see those rewards coming in. So this to me just does not make sense.
Well, I mean, if we're talking like Vince logic, right? Again, and I'm playing the finance side of things, right?
Oh yeah.
3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, I got a poster here from 2016 to, I guess, 2019-ish. NXT was one of the hottest products, like touring products you could go to. All their pay-per-views were, I mean, near sellouts. They were packed buildings. They were piggybacking, obviously, on major WWE shows, but they had a internal following that was working. And, I think because of the pandemic, I think because of going to 2 hours, I think because of taking talent away, it's lost a little bit of that sparkle. And I would say that it's lost that sparkle to a lot of people in the company. If you've noticed, they've gone back to a rebuilding process where, yeah, they got their core guys, but they're not, the Nakamura's and the Finn Balor's are not there. They're not going after those guys. They're going after homegrown. Let's work these guys. Let's create new talent, and they are doing a good job. Like Bronson Reed, great example, right? They've done a good job with this character. They're rebuilding Eli Drake as LA Knight, and that's kind of working out. They're attempting something different here, and if I don't see them thinking NXT's this profitable brand anymore. We got a little glimpse of that where they could have turned a profit or whatever, less hemorrhage, I guess you could say, because it's always going to cost them money for developmental, but. Now that you're not doing major buildings, and listen, great example. Where's NXT gonna be? Are they doing an NXT in Orlando, Sean?
That's the working plan, but I think they're doing that for the sake of flexibility in case, because I mean they don't have to put a hold on the CWC. They can find a venue 2 days before in California if they so choose and cancel CWC, and it's no problem. But the working plan was to do the Sunday after SummerSlam at the CWC. Yeah,
I mean,
which is so weird.
Though, which is so bizarre. Because you obviously Vegas is a different beast, but you have 40,000 people coming to your show in Vegas. Are they not confident that the following day they could put on an NXT show that people are going to stick around for? If this was 3-4 years ago, I would say they were very confident. Now, maybe less.
Why couldn't they run it Friday?
Why couldn't they run Friday? That's also a great question. I don't know what buildings are available. I don't know. I haven't digged in the situation, but that's a great example. Why couldn't they do it Friday and do it Friday, Saturday? Listen, the pandemic has really whacked everything out of place. A lot of that is to blame, but also a little less confidence. You could attribute that also.
And also, I think it should be important to know also that, you know, one of the key reasons why WrestleMania weekend is so much fun is because you have all of these events that are running, right? And you have WrestleMania, and you have, you know, Hall of Fame, and, you know, Raw after Mania, etc. And then on top of that, you have all of the, you know, the indies and all of that. So when people, you know, when they spend their hard-earned money to go to WrestleMania weekend, they know they're going to get a lot out of it. Now, as somebody, and, you know, I know we're all going to SummerSlam, but, you know, as somebody that's paying for, you know, my hotel and I'm driving over there, I know how expensive it is. So for me, like, I would only feel that it would make sense to have a show the following day because, hey, people want to get more money for, you know, more bang for their buck. So it does kind of seem a little like, all right, well, you know, after the event, we all just go home. I do think that people would have stick around to get a little bit more, especially if you are traveling, you know, from the East Coast or from wherever you're coming from. I do think that they would have, you know, gotten a little bit more value for the money that they're spending.
Let me just say to Garrett, you know why they can't do Friday?
Why?
They're SmackDown.
SmackDown.
Friday.
Oh, yeah.
I keep forgetting.
That was
forgetting
dumb.
that. But, I mean,
That
to
was
go back
dumb.
to Kross for a second, you know, last night Sean and I were DMing, and I had heard that he was going to debut, but I had no idea what the plan was. And Sean messaged me. He's like, hey, they're moving stuff around. He's losing. I was like, oh, crap, he's going to do. And it made total sense for him to lose. You're going to think I'm nuts. But I was like, oh, they're doing that title invitational. Lashley's going to challenge someone. Here comes Karrion Kross. They have a competitive match, and he loses, obviously, to the World Heavyweight Champion. You're going to lose. And it's exactly what Cena was doing. That worked for both Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, even though Zayn was out for months after that. But it worked. Those invitationals worked. Instead, they brought Jeff Hardy back after being off TV. And it was like a non-event, you know. I have a theory. Maybe this is leading into, you know, the power of the urn type gimmick where Scarlett is the power of the urn, where she has to be at ringside. So this man is powerful. I don't know. I hope they don't screw him up. I hope they don't screw this guy up because he has a lot of potential as being, you know, one of the next big stars in that company.
Okay, so let's move on to the other thing that I was scratching my head about, which is I think hardcore wrestling fans were kind of just wondering, where's Keith Lee? Keith Lee has been a little vague about things on social media, or I should say a lot vague about things on social media. The fans, you know, you guys may know insights about it, but the fan base doesn't really understand why Keith Lee's not on TV. He's not telling us, WWE's not telling us. They re-debut him in this role that Andrew just described, and he comes out, and immediately I hear Corey Graves is, I wouldn't say burying him, but making it very clear that there is a lot of space between Bobby Lashley and Keith Lee. He would say a lot of things like, you know, he would point out the mistakes Keith Lee was making. He would, you know, talk about, oh, you know, Keith Lee may think that being patient is good here, but he's going to learn that it's very. So he was very negative on Keith Lee. He's a heel commentator. Maybe that was part of the thing. Maybe Jimmy Smith was supposed to fill in some of the blanks of being pro Keith Lee. I don't know what the idea was. When I'm hearing this commentary, my initial thought is, oh my God, Keith Lee is going to get steamrolled in this match. And maybe steamrolled is a little bit hard, a little bit harsh, but Bobby Lashley clearly beat him sufficiently, and they're setting up this Bill Goldberg match, so that's the setup. But why does Keith Lee have to be the one to take this beating? So let's start, Andrew. I haven't started with you first yet, but I want to hear your thoughts. Keith Lee, why him, and why such the the squash?
I 100% believe they thought this was going to go over. I don't think on paper, when I asked this morning, I don't think on paper, and I'm filling in some blanks here with this sentence, right? I don't think on paper they thought it would look as bad, you know, for Keith Lee as it did. I thought Keith Lee, listen, I think the commentary was a little out of place, especially for a guy that's returning. You don't normally hear commentary like that where they're just totally burying him. Like Corey Graves, obviously he's the heel and he's going to play it up. But the fact that they were talking about how slow he is, you know, which he's really fast. I mean, that was the most baffling part, but maybe that's part of the heel persona he's playing, where he's doing the total opposite. He should have lost, obviously, to the world champion. That's a given. You're setting up a major match with Bill Goldberg. I know a lot of people are unhappy about that, but you're still setting it up. It's a major high-profile match with a high-profile person, so Keith Lee had to lose. I think it was all execution there. I don't think it was the intention to make him look bad. I just feel like the execution of how that match looked to us and to other people, it didn't really sit well. But I do want to say this, when talking, I have a ton of casual pro wrestling people around me. Most of the people that I interact with that like wrestling are just casual fans. They don't really have an opinion of Keith Lee. They don't know Keith Lee like we know him, what he's capable of. So to a lot of people, he's just that. He's another body on the roster with really not much going on right now. It's a shame, and I hope they correct this with proper writing and more time. I'm not saying Keith Lee's over for these people. Definitely not. He's super talented, but you're gonna have to get him back in the proper lane here.
Sean, were you hearing the same stuff as Andrew heard about the execution?
Yeah, the execution's really bad. I mean, they did 4 rematches on this show. Any of those could have been cut for time. You didn't have to do Rhea and Charlotte. They could have brawled at the end of the show. That set up the same thing. They didn't need a match. Keith Lee could have beaten any one of those 24/7 dorks that were running around. Any of them in a singles match, in a squash match. And then Bobby Lashley could have beaten anybody. And to Andrew's point, I mean, it's WWE's fault that this guy isn't over. They brought him in. He got a big win, and they put him in no contests and DQs, and then he's been off TV, which no fault of WWE's. From what I understand, that he was off TV, but it was just baffling. It was, and I think it was compounded by so many baffling booking decisions throughout the night that it magnifies this stuff.
Denise, you can have the final thought on the Keith Lee segment here.
Well, I have to agree with everything that Sean and Andrew said, because that really is the case. Andrew kind of touched on, the casuals. And if anything, I think last night's Raw basically showed that, the social media community is really in the minority here, where people have different opinions. And while all of us are like, yeah, Keith Lee, there are people that are essentially like, all right, yep, Keith Lee, because there was really, honest to God, no reaction to Keith Lee whatsoever. And I didn't mind him losing to Bobby Lashley whatsoever. But here's the thing, though. Would I have, well, obviously because Bobby Lashley's the champion and all of that, but would I have brought in Keith Lee back like this? Definitely not. And, like Sean just mentioned, they could have had him come in and, had a match with anybody else, and it would have been perfectly acceptable, but they decided to go about it this way. And I'm just like, all right, well, maybe they wanted to really put over the fact that Bobby Lashley is, essentially, brutalizing this, big giant guy. So if anything, it makes Bobby Lashley look more powerful. But it just kind of tells me that we're not really heading anywhere with Keith Lee. And we should have already seen this, because when, Keith Lee was holding 2 titles on NXT and, he had that grand big moment, he comes into Raw and essentially everything goes downhill. So, I mean, to be honest, I don't even think I'm that completely shocked about the treatment of Keith Lee whatsoever.
By the way, someone's going to get a GIF of you flexing, and that'll be on the internet. Okay, so the follow-up to that is that they're setting up for Bill Goldberg, and we don't have to spend a lot of time here because we got 5 weeks to talk about this match. But first impression, I know Andrew and Sean have been all over this story from the beginning, but just give me your temperature. Thumbs up, thumbs down, Bill Goldberg versus Bobby Lashley at SummerSlam. Denise, go back to you.
Again, yesterday, he received a massive reaction, a massive pop from the audience. And I just mentioned right now that if anything, last night, basically every they told us essentially that people keep asking, why does WWE keep going back to Goldberg? Well, last night's reaction was exactly why they keep coming back to Goldberg. Now, I've mentioned this a zillion times. I'm a Goldberg fan. I still mark out for Goldberg, like sue me. But at the same time, I understand that this is not the direction that they should be heading in, always, essentially giving them this title shots. But at the same time, again, going back to that reaction, people are still interested in seeing Goldberg.
Andrew, tell me about the analytics of this decision.
T-shirt sales, figure sales, poster sales. You know, they got a lot of merch makeup to do, and who better than a Bill Goldberg? If they could bring Hulk Hogan out to face Bobby Lashley, they 100% could, or would, I should say, at this point. Listen. Is that match for me? No, it's obviously not. I'm not against seeing Bill on the show like this. I understand why they're doing it. I think the live audiences are going to eat this up, right? They're touring. They're trying to sell tickets. The people in the crowd, every time that Goldberg sound hits and he comes out and he's doing his crazy kicks and everything, they're going to go nuts. It's just a given. You know, he was really not overly exposed in WWE. Because his run was terrible, the first one, and when he came back for the second time, it was much smaller. But guys, the casual fans love him. Like I know that this is really difficult for a lot of people to understand because we sit here, we're online, we're having conversations, we're analyzing his work rate, his foot. Somebody was talking about his foot movement the other day. I swear to God, someone was like, "Well, you know, his foot, you know, he wasn't a great worker because look at his foot movement." You don't need to be the best worker. I get it. Is it for me? No. Give or take. It doesn't matter. Would I have booked this? No. I would use Bill Goldberg in a very different way where I'm having him, you know, occasionally show up and kill somebody and then go from there. But
Dolph Ziggler.
I thought that was the best way they booked this guy.
Yep.
By the way, I have Raw ratings if you want it.
Go for it.
1.9. I think 1.923.
So what was that bump from last week?
Sean, you would remember this.
Pretty significant move. I think it was 1.7 or 1.6 last week. So it's a few 100,000.
Yeah. So listen, long story short, I think it's for SummerSlam and for that crowd, and you're trying to fill a building of 43,000 people. You still got a way to go. I think a Bill Goldberg would be the name to add to that.
Yeah, 1.6 last week, so over 310,000.
Okay. I was hoping for a little bit more, but that's good. That's good too. Okay, I'll just say this. I agree with what Andrew is saying. I do not hate this match. I think it's completely justifiable for this show. They don't really have anyone else, so that's kind of their deal. But I think it'll get a good pop. I think it'll feel good. I think ESPN will decide that they can cover Bill Goldberg, and that's better than you know what else they could do. But Sean, shut us down with this topic. Your thoughts on Goldberg?
It's their fault they don't have anyone else.
Yeah, 100%.
It's their fault. And
big time.
He lost his last title match. He lost his last one before that. We know it's going to be a fun 2-minute sprint, and I'm okay with that. But I don't need that fun 2-minute sprint to be for the title. It could be against literally anybody else, and I would be probably more interested. Probably because I know the nature of his contract. He's got 2 matches per year on his deal through next year. And he has said that himself in interviews. That's how we know it. I'm all for Goldberg having a spectacle. I was there live and I saw him crush Ziggler, who didn't get hurt one bit by that. I mean, except physically. I'm sure he hurt like hell physically from being there with Goldberg. But wasn't hurt at all in doing what Goldberg does. There's a special attraction there. I mean, I watched Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell fight like a year and a half ago. I'll watch like anything goofy, crazy like that.
Me too. I love it.
Yeah. I watched the Paul brothers fight. I watched Anderson Silva box, and it was really good. Like, I like the freak show stuff, the circus fights, and that's what Bill Goldberg is. But you don't have to make the WWE title a sideshow as well. I think that's maybe not necessarily the best course of action to take there. Plus, you've got Cena coming back after a significant layoff, going for the other title, but that's a little bit different. It's just different than Bill Goldberg because we haven't seen it as much. But Bill Goldberg, it's every single year he's coming back and doing this.
And but Sean,
right.
I just want to touch on what Sean said. Sean said, you know, it's their fault, right? That there's nobody else. It's not their fault today. It's their fault over the last, 7 years, 10 years of not creating that mega star. I call it the spoke on the wheel era that CM Punk was talking about, where everybody's just a byproduct of the company. It's that variety show about the McMahon family that happens to own a pro wrestling promotion and his incompetent employees. That's really what this is. They have not created that star, and that's why they're going back to the well. 22 years ago, Bill Goldberg was on top of the wrestling business. 23 years ago, 1998, 1999. And he's in a world title match. Yeah, he's a spectacle, and the fact that you could utilize him and use him is a total win for WWE. However, what happened? Where are the guys? Who are the stars over the last 5 years, 7 years, 10 years that you could bring back? Those guys are really thin.
There's hardly any that have debuted since the PC has become a thing. And I got some heat saying Vince McMahon doesn't produce stars. He doesn't. He used to. He used to produce stars. And he's lucky if he maintains the stars now. Charlotte, he's done very well. It took them years with Bayley. The Becky thing was in spite of WWE booking. There are so many people that get over because of how poorly they're treated. Read Daniel Bryan's book. I mean, just look at how they handled Becky Lynch. The first night after she was super over at that SummerSlam, they tried to go all you people heel with her. Like that. I think the closest that he got in the PC era was Braun Strowman a couple years ago. They had, a slam dunk with him and Roman Reigns. It was a very fun feud. And even then, it was pretty obvious they were going to make him go from what he was to the, hey, I'm going to be out here shilling Cricket Wireless and smiling and high-fiving kids thing, which can work, but it wasn't what got him over. And I thought last night was a very, very good example of Vince McMahon doesn't produce stars anymore, and also he has trouble maintaining them when they get a head start somewhere else.
Sean, when I asked somebody about that, you know what they said to me? They said, hey, have you ever seen Cirque du Soleil? I said, yeah. He goes, have you seen it? And where have you seen it? I'm like, oh, in Vegas. He goes, do you know anybody's name on that show? I said, no, I don't. He goes, what'd you think of the show? I said, it was fantastic. It was a great show. He goes, exactly.
Yeah, I know Barry Griffiths. I know Barry Griffiths. Tell him to suck it, because you know Mason Ryan was on that show.
I know who Mason Ryan is. But I mean that's taking it. I mean, this was from somebody over there, a former writer, and it was taking it to an extreme. But there is something to be said about that logic where you're coming to see WWE. And yeah, maybe there is a favorite, but you're coming to see WWE. You're not. But
there's also something to be said about their viewership dropping about 65% in the past 6 years, and live event attendance doing so poorly that they were outright not going to do house shows anymore. That was a point of negotiation for some of the wrestlers they were offering contracts to. Was, hey, more house shows for a while, so yeah. But I mean, nobody wanted to, and people will take that literally. Not as many people wanted to show up and watch the show. Not only that, not as many people want to sit at home and watch the show. That's what the lack of big stars are doing. I mean, look at UFC. I mean, they've got their standard ESPN deal. They still want pay-per-view draws. They still want Conor McGregor. They're talking about putting him in a rematch with Dustin Poirier after all the stuff that's happened. You got to have stars too, I think.
All right, I want one follow-up with you, Sean. We know what Roman and all the things that Roman is doing. We know what the plan is to lead to at WrestleMania. Obviously, there's this carrot dangling with The Rock. What is the Bobby Lashley thing leading to? What is the big match for him down the line? Is it Brock Lesnar, or is it something that we don't even know?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I have no idea. It's so hard for me to even think about what they could possibly dangle. I'm interested to hear what you think.
I mean, I think Brock Lesnar's a fantastic match. That's a match that, you talk about dream matches. I think people have been kind of thinking about that match since Lashley debuted as what do they call him? Blaster Lashley back in the day, and that they've kind of circled that. So I think that's one that you could build up, and it would be amazing. That's what I hope it is, because I still think that could be big. And it's, again, kind of back to what you were saying about the box office draws and stuff. Brock is still, he may not be what he once was because of the way that they used him, but he's still that guy. So that would be mine. But I just didn't know, because I can't tell I guess the signs aren't as clear on the Bobby Lashley side of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's the easy one. Lashley Lesnar is the easy one, and that's what they should build to, I think. But I just don't know what they can do to get Brock back, because it's like, if he wanted to be back, he'd be back.
Creative's not working for me, pal.
Nah, you just ante up, man. That's speaking Lesnar's language. Ante up. Okay, so I've one more segment. We were gonna do two more, but I think this conversation was really strong. So I don't think we need two more segments. But I have one question for everybody, and it's related to all of this stuff about fans being back. And I know, I think all of us are going to be or planning to be at All Out. I don't know who's planning to be at SummerSlam. I imagine most of, if not all of you three are going to SummerSlam. But here's my question, which is, and we'll be topical here, won't be political, we'll be topical, but the Delta variant is really all over the news. The unvaccinated rate in the U.S. or the partially vaccinated rate in the U.S. is all over the news. Watching those crowds, watching what that crowd does to not only WWE TV but also AEW TV, any pro wrestling. I didn't catch too much of Slammiversary, but I imagine it helped as well. And let's start with Denise. Does any of this news scare you a little bit about us possibly going backwards, or are you confident that if we're smart, we can keep the fans in the building?
To be honest, it's not even about that. It's about, I feel like you got to separate, what's going on with the pandemic, what's going on with COVID from wrestling. At the end of the day, people's lives are up here, and wrestling events, and whether or not having live crowds or not, that's down here. That's just the real thing. And it is terrifying because I've been watching the news, I've been keeping up with all of that stuff, and I am reading different stuff every single day. Like, are we going to need a third shot? Are we not going to need a third shot? When is this happening? And then I was reading the people, I think it was like a local news station in Las Vegas that was talking about the fact that just a couple weeks ago there's been like this this been a spread of COVID, and I'm just thinking like, oh my god, like I don't even know what to think anymore. I mean, I hope secondary this getting bad. Wrestling is secondary, okay? I just don't want this to get bad again to the point, where people are losing their lives. Whether or not this affects wrestling and the crowds and all of that, to me, is completely secondary. But this does obviously, make me nervous about, the future just moving forward. And even just today, I went on and checked to see, I specifically checked Las Vegas because, Las Vegas is just, what we're looking at. But, I did check, and there is, an increase in the cases of COVID and how many more people are getting it. So I just hope that just things get better overall.
Andrew, this also impacts your real world, right? Your business, what you do for a living. So I'm sure you're looking at this stuff constantly. What is your thought on what we're going through here?
Yeah, I for my real life, I have a bunch of clients in the hospitality world, including a couple venues here in New York that I work closely with, where this is a big issue, right? You've shuttered businesses. People were not able to make money. Now we're back. Things are rolling. I mean, New York City it's not back. The crime is pretty bad. It's atrocious. If you're walking in Manhattan, just a little insight here. I'm walking to Penn Station. I don't drive into Manhattan. I take the train. I walk around. It's not great, but only because people aren't back yet. This past couple of weeks, more and more people are coming, and nightlife is back. It's booming. I'm gonna say this. I think it's gonna be extremely difficult for the government, municipalities to turn around and start shutting things down again. I don't see that happening. However, you got to use discretion. Whatever's best for you. I had COVID. For me, it wasn't a big deal. I had a case of the sniffles more than anything else. But for other people, it's a very different situation. It's a very scary situation. So you have to use your own judgment. If you feel uncomfortable, obviously you shouldn't do it. For me, I feel comfortable doing this. I'm ready to start moving on with my life. I get regular tests still because of my business, because of how many places I'm in. Even for myself, I get tested all the time. I'm vaccinated. So for me, it's not so much an issue, but I'm not telling people that it shouldn't be an issue for you. If this is something that you're thinking about and it makes you uncomfortable, you shouldn't do it. I mean, it's that easy.
All right, how many times have you gotten swabbed up the nose?
I think I've lost a few IQ points by that thing going up there. I mean, I was at one point, honestly, it was like every 3 days I was getting swabbed.
Wow.
it was literally every 3 days we were doing it. So, whatever. It is what it is. I am going to be optimistic here and say that we are past the worst, and now we're back to we're slowly getting back into the swing of things.
Sean, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, cases are the highest they've been since, I think, April. That's not a good sign. I just wish that everybody would do the responsible thing. And yeah, that's what I wish, because my God, it was so bad. It was so bad. And yeah, I mean, good God, I remember before all this, you'd be worried every year that you're going to go home with the Royal Rumble flu. You would always hear about it. Like, everybody leaves the Royal Rumble like a little bit sick and sniffly and all that stuff. Now you got to worry about something far worse, even if you're vaccinated.
Yep. Okay. Appreciate all of your thoughtful comments about that. Again, I didn't want to make it political, but I thought it's very topical, and it affects kind of what we're talking about. So let's end. This will be the last segment of the show, and we've been doing this for the last 2 episodes as well, which is our MVP performer of the week. I'll lead, and I'll just take the easy way out, and we'll save Sean for last, because he probably didn't even know that I was going to ask him this.
Sorry, Sean.
So I'm just going to go with Cena. Cena did 2 things. He came out on Money in the Bank, shook his hand at Roman, came out on Raw. I thought he cut a very excellent promo that made me think of the type of promos that I enjoy, and it felt like wrestling was back in a sense, at least in WWE. And so I'm going to go with John. But that's the easy one. So you can also choose John, or you can go back to, whether it was Slammiversary or whether it was Dynamite or Money in the Bank or whatever, and choose yours. But Denise, I hope I gave you enough time to think about it. You're up.
You did. Okay, so I know, like you said, the easy option is John Cena. Hell, maybe it's even Nikki ASH, whatever. But I actually got to go with someone completely polar opposite. And the reason for my choosing of this person is when this match was announced at Slammiversary as Sami Callihan, Kenny Omega, there was a lot of people that were like, down and out about it being Sami Callihan in this match with Kenny Omega. And I was like, no, they are going to have a fantastic match. And they had my favorite match of like the wrestling week this week, and definitely one of my favorite matches overall of the year. So because of that, I'm going to give my MVP vote to Sami Callihan.
Wow. I did not see that one coming. Nice job. Andrew, what about you?
I got 2. I'm going to show AEW some love here, because we didn't talk about him obviously today, but I'm going to go with Hangman Page. I feel like that moment with Kenny, that face-to-face, really solidified him to people that were kind of on the fence about this guy being, that hot baby face challenger for him. On the WWE side, I'm going to go with Bill Goldberg. You know why? He is an MVP. He didn't concuss himself. He didn't fall. He didn't hurt anybody. He didn't cause some sort of trauma to the building. He didn't kick a door. I'm gonna give him those the kudos stickers, the MVP stickers. It goes to Bill Goldberg.
All right, Sean, the We're Live Pal week starts on Tuesday and it goes through Monday. Okay. So if you're thinking of time frame, sure. But go ahead. You finish us off with your MVP performer of the week.
For the sake of just saying somebody different than what you all said, I'll give you a men's and a women's. Women's, I'm actually going to go Deonna Purrazzo, because her having a mystery opponent had some buzz to it. She had a good match against Thunder Rosa. There was a lot of stuff cut from it, but also she developed another feud with Mickie James. We kind of put out there. That's not even who she's supposed to face at NWA Empower, which is a completely different company. But you got ROH tweeting her, people in ROH saying, hey, please come here too. You've got Scott D'Amore saying that Britt Baker cornered him, like, hey, when's she going to wrestle me? She's the belle of the ball right now. And then for the men's aspect, I got to go with Darby Allin, and plenty of credit to Ethan Page too, because Darby Allin kind of laughs in the face of so many people that are like, this person isn't big enough to be a star. They don't cut a good enough promo. They don't do this. That style doesn't get over. And he has proven to be a consistent draw as a smaller guy that does not talk and works a style that is unlike the conventional style that so many have seen and said that's a main event guy for years and years and years.
I definitely retweeted a Debbie Malenko. Let's get Debbie Malenko on this
Whew.
NWA show one. So I love all the picks. I'm so happy that we all had different choices. Spread out the MVP, Performer of the Week love. So before I shut this down, I did want to give Sean an opportunity, talk a little bit about what he's doing, talk about Fightful. I think probably everybody who watches this has a pretty good idea, but also, you can talk about the Select as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. FightfulSelect.com. That's where we post our exclusive news. From full-on stories to little news bits that we get, we generally have, we always have at least one piece of exclusive news up there every single day. In addition, we have additional podcasts, about 7 a week. I do one that's about a 15-minute show that just covers our exclusives. Every single week, I do a Q&A show where I answer, quite frankly, all the questions that are submitted. And we just got a ton of stuff over there. So, yeah, if you're interested in that type of thing, which if you're watching this, you probably are, I'd appreciate it. I've got a story up right now about some of the frustration within NXT about Karrion Kross, and I'll have a few more really good stories up this week.
Yeah, I can say, folks, check it out. I think Sean and company do a really good job there. So one last note for us. So at least for me, sad to say that for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be off. Well, it's not sad necessarily for me because I'll be in Hawaii, but for my participation in this show, which is one of my favorite things to do every week, I'll be out. So Andrew and Denise, hopefully you can find someone else to be in the third chair, but not someone who's that good, because I don't want to be so easily replaced. Maybe average. Bring in an average person.
I'll try.
I thought you were going to ask if you were hoping that Andrew and I can coexist. I thought that's where you were heading. I was like, all right, well, we'll see if we can coexist, Andrew and I.
No, it's nothing but love on this show. One other thing is, we mentioned it last week. I think there are a few tickets out there for the Dave and Brian Q&A, which is going to be at All Out Weekend. We'll all be there.
Do you know how many's left?
I think less than 10. Yeah, I think less than 10. So go to Facebook. If you are on Facebook, we have a Facebook group. Type in WON/F4W convention. We have a really kind of cool group about a lot of the travelers from the website who go to shows, but the link to the Q&A is there. Tony the leader put the link there. So check it out, and we're going to be there. So we'll come say hi, and I want to talk to anybody who watches this show and see what you like or maybe what you don't like, and we can change some things. But anyway, for Denise and Andrew and Sean, Ross Sapp, thank you for joining us. I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.